Good morning, everyone. My name is Damien Curley, and proud to bring you this week's Lincoln Lens. At Lincoln Recruitment, we began the Lincoln Lens with the objective of providing our community with a forum for insights and commentary in relation to some of the most topical industries in the market at present. And throughout this series, we'll be hosting a number of interviews, a number of webinars, just to provide you with some up-to-date data and insights across various markets that hopefully you'll find beneficial. My role within the business, I recruit across marketing, digital, and product services. And today I have with me Ian Mc Grath, who is a business consultant with EGth Marketing and Media Consultants. Ian has a 20 years background in the media and marketing landscape in Ireland. Would be very well known to the marketing fraternity. He's a man of opinion, and he's a man of deep insight within the media and marketing landscape. So, Ian, good morning and welcome to you.
Thank you for such a lovely introduction, Damien. And I appreciate that.
I think people get a bit embarrassed when they hear, exactly how long they've been in the marketplace. So, look, I will take that experience, Ian, as being, very worthwhile to this morning's discussion. Would you mind just giving me a bit of an overview yourself, I guess, in terms of your background in your own words, and some of the brands that you've worked across, and then we can go from there in an informal conversational manner if we can.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell talks about these people who have been either generationally lucky or maybe generationally unlucky. And I think if I count recessions, I'm probably generationally unlucky. But if I count actually my career, I think I've been generationally lucky. I started in advertising agencies really at the start of the .com boom. It was a little bit of a wobble, around 2000 when I got into the industry. But certainly, like media started to really ramp up around the time. That's when channels started to fragment. When consumer insight became a core focus in terms of where marketing spent a lot of their efforts. It wasn't just about spray and pray. So I got into the industry at a very interesting time when change really started to happen. Now it hasn't stopped since, so it's always been an interesting business to be in. So I've been lucky enough within the time that I've worked in agencies, about 18 years, to have worked with some of the biggest and best, including the likes of Diageo, GSK, Cadbury, Sky, Allianz. There's a great list that I have. I'm very proud in terms of the work that I've done.
So I think you've just secured yourself some Guinness, some Cadburys.
What else do I need in my fridge? I wonder.
GSK have Lucozade now.
I need to go out and get some milk now.
Glanbia?
So I've worked with Glanbia as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So
Allianz Insurance,
but
how's your insurance?
they are it's not a lie to kind of say the biggest and best. It really is I worked with Coke. It was from my early days within the getting into advertising. I had a little bucket list in terms of who I wanted to work with, and lucky enough to have all but one. I won't tell you who. All but one kind of ticked off on that list. But yeah, so that's been great because the advantage of working in an agency is you get to work with such a breadth of industries. You get to work on different types of briefs, and you get to work in different areas, which is quite important to me because I think maybe some of what marketing's lost is a little bit of the a multidisciplinary view across each of the areas of marketing, and also an end-to-end approach. But agencies gave me that grounding. I think agencies, particularly at the time that I started, had that in their makeup. And then actually having run an agency, I moved into private consultancy for myself. So there was some active briefs that I wanted to get into, and also work in other areas of marketing, particularly around areas like product pricing and how to build effective marketing teams and introduce new measurement into the marketplace. Very fruitful career actually. Now on reflection.
Yeah, well, I mean, at this time, I guess we're all looking at a little bit of reflection and taking stock of our own lives and our own careers. Just with regards to, I guess, the part that marketing plays within, within the commercial makeup. And I guess in your time, you've been advising heads of marketing and you've been advising, CMOs and other senior marketing practitioners. In terms of their interaction, within the wider business, I'm talking about dealing with heads of finance, dealing with CFOs, working with the board and with the C-suite around budgets, and I guess using marketing as a key revenue driving tool. What's your observation on what marketing brings to a business and how it should be positioned, to senior stakeholders who, with all due respect, don't come from a marketing background and maybe don't really understand it?
I think that there's different levels of marketing, obviously, within different businesses. And sorry about the cliche, but the four P's have been broken up within a business. And often the way marketing falls now is it doesn't look after place and it doesn't look after pricing, and even product and promotion are a little bit split or fragmented too. Um, so, that universal view is probably not something that is an actual in most businesses now, So you could understand CMOs with, I suppose, more limited input find it harder to find channels of growth. And marketing previously was always tasked with driving growth within a business, finding new audiences, breaking new markets, those type of areas. So, if you look at it from maybe just, product or mainly a communication point of view, which is what CMOs are mainly tasked to do, I think one of the things that they need to show is where marketing pays back.
Okay.
It's the fundamental language in terms of a CFO or CEO. Where does it pay back? Where is this going to deliver future growth or immediate growth, in terms of a sales turnaround for our business? So let's kind of speak their language. Start, if you're anyone in the marketing department, always know where marketing pays back. I think the second thing then they need to do is, have the vision and have the narrative, because marketing is, it's highly emotive as well. But I don't understand how it wouldn't be highly emotive within a business. We know that storytelling and emotions drive better connections with consumers.
Mm.
It's equally important that it does that within a business as well, and that people believe in the brand, the brands that they work for. So I think that's hugely important too, and that the board believe in the vision and narrative of the marketing team. And then kind of echoing back to the point I made, I think marketers need to have a better combination of both specialists and people who have multidisciplined experience, a wider view, who can see each of the parts moving and pull them together, and then also as a specialist who can make things happen faster, more accurately. But at the moment, what's happened is because there's so much fragmentation across um, marketing in general. You have some people doing CRM who might never talk to somebody who's looking after the ad campaign, or somebody who is relaunching a brand who hasn't really gone and say like, we need to relook at our branches, our stores, what they look like, what's the UX online. It's just not the joined up approach. So you do need someone with multidisciplined skill to be able to join all those dots and get the best out of their teams. And then the last piece I'd say that's quite fundamental is that you can work cross-functionally, not just within the spectrum of marketing, but with other departments as well. Like every department effectively is
Mm.
almost tasked with growth, But the power of a strong CMO would be that they can help, move IT, maybe it's UX, maybe it's legal, that they're able to get them to move all at the right speed for their marketing to be effective. So you have to be able to work cross-functionally within a business as well.
So if a CMO needs to justify and report ROI to a CEO or CFO, what should a CEO or a CFO look for, in hiring their head of marketing or in hiring, their CMO, just given that customer experience and really driving customer value, and a lot of that is shaped by marketing, is so intrinsically linked to commercial success and driving revenue. If you were to speak to a head of finance or a CEO right now, what advice would you give them in terms of how they interact with their marketing team and who they should hire?
Because marketing is so diverse, and also I suppose it depends on the business model. So different businesses obviously have different performance models. Now they're not so different as in they have USPs or they're completely different from their competitors. But there are different life cycles, different stage of growth, and they have different interaction with customers. So, but it really does depend on the business model. So if you kind of take an example like Ryanair, it's a low-cost airline. It's very hard for
quite a topical company to talk about now at the moment.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get the headlines. But
Michael, are you listening?
It's very hard for competitors to replicate their business model. But you then need a marketer who is able to turn performance into margin. Work with the sales in terms of load factors and stuff like that. So it's very operational, performance-driven type marketing. Like they don't necessarily need to invest in as much in the brand. Now they've obviously done a very good job in terms of migrating to always getting better. But there's a price war coming in airlines, and Ryanair's operating model and the way that they drive their performance marketing is probably best suited to the environment that's coming down the line. Whereas if you're like say a completely different type of product like an FMCG, you do need to build more recognition. You do need to tell more of a brand story because your people are flooded with choice. So you need to stand out, and there needs to be marketers who fundamentally understand how do we build brands. And I'm not saying there needs to be such a divorce between either. Like there still is, like if somebody asked you about Ryanair, what their brand stands for. So they've got that ground. I don't mean that there needs to be that divorce, but it's purely down to kind of what type of business they are in. And really, if you get a good CMO, they'll probably be better tasked to tell you where the gaps are. And that's the best way of, understanding, is this the right person who's going to drive success in our business? It's not whether they can make a good ad. It's not whether
creative is only one element, I guess, of
it's
putting a good brand campaign together.
It is very important, but and also it probably should be given more credit to the people stay with the creative for longer. But you can't kind of overlook how that business operates within its market, and marketing should be able to work with that, because if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. There's no point telling a big story if it's actually a low cost seat that gets people onto your airplanes. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, it is quite a complex. It was a complex question, but I think you've given a unique example in terms of Ryanair.
Even with that, I probably have made it a little bit more linear than it actually really is. There is a let's call it a multiverse to marketing. So when you simplify things as well, you kind of have to be careful not to drop it into the everyday version. So there still is a little bit more to it than what I've actually kind of demonstrated through those examples. So don't just take that and think that you can go off and write the CMO's brief now. It's like as maybe a little bit of stimulus, but again I kind of come back to the best marketers are able to identify the gaps and spot the growth potential within business, because that's where the payback is.
And you talk about spotting the gaps. You're published in a number of publications, Work and Marketing Weekly, and you do publish quite a few articles yourself on LinkedIn, and encourage our listeners to have a look on your LinkedIn profile. But one point that you've made is to measure and measure again. why is it important to measure so much, and what do you, I guess, what can a marketeer or any practitioner derive from those measurements in terms of fine tuning campaigns?
Well, generally, other parts of business are more measured than marketing. I
Mm.
did an analysis which I checked with System One market research recently. Roughly 6% of total global marketing spend is spent on market research. And kind of the numbers that I ran through with them, only 1% of that is actually forward facing. So a lot of that market research is looking backwards.
Yeah.
And let's take it as a big lesson. Businesses said they need to be agile as a result of the lesson from COVID. The reality is, the skills and the what has happened in the past, they're not
No
always the
bearing.
best to explain the future.
Mm.
So we need better research into understanding future behavior of consumers, how that's going to change. Um, Actually, markets competitive. Where's the rivalry coming in? Because you still see businesses that are caught off guard by new entrants to marketplaces. Strange that there are surprises these days, but there still are. And I just think that those type of things need to be invested in.
Mm.
Certainly marketing gets a very low level of measurement. And that figure is without the likes of analytics and all, but you have to understand what is key to measure, and it has to be related back to your business goals. So it isn't always, people sometimes think they have measurement, but it's a channel metric. It's not necessarily always they might do brand tracking as well, by the way, and pay
Mm.
separately for that. They don't always know which is the lead indicator for future sales or for growth,
Yeah.
or are are we just telling the news with what we found out in this customer, or is there actually a signal in there that we can grow a marketing? Those type of things, I think, definitely needs more investment to go deeper and to look to the future rather than just kind of validate the past.
Yeah, I mean, it's an old adage, that it's real-time data or no data at all. And I guess we could probably take this uh, uh, segue into digital, and I guess what's been happening, most recently, with COVID and with the move online, especially obviously within a retail sense, that's, I guess, most relevant. Um, how has, I guess, the growth of that online channel and digital as a wider platform, and perhaps maybe we can dispel this myth that there's digital and there's marketing. How does it all integrate, and how does it all form part of, I guess, the one strategy? Broad question, I appreciate, but keen to get your thoughts on how you discuss that with corporate clients.
Well, like I think everybody knows now that digital is not a separate piece, but they haven't necessarily organized themselves around it. With COVID aside, I actually think that a lot of companies were, you know, looking to reorganize their business, set themselves ready for the next decade ahead, and maybe digitize more of their business or how they actually operate. I think those conversations have been had. I actually see huge changes around, like Coca-Cola globally, Pepsi have in-housed, some kind of drinks companies have moved to back to local lead local markets as leads. You just see a lot of changes in relation to how companies have shaped up, even just their marketing departments. So I think a lot of because of that, digitalization has been on the agenda. COVID has now put a real spotlight in terms of the speed of how quickly companies are on their roadmap to achieving that. The changes that might have been put in place, before this crisis kind of happened. Um, so I would say, from a marketing point of view, 66% of the money spent in 2021 would be on digital channels. So
Mm.
you can't overlook the fact that anyone who is playing outside of that, exclusively outside of that, it's kind of missing a big connection with consumers, where they shop, what they spend time with, how they socialize, just overall, they're like you're leaving yourself out of too much of the picture. So it's kind of like digitize or die in some ways, which is a McKinsey headline I think from about 10 years ago. But but now people are actually on board with that, and they know that digital is within our business. We're kind of we are a digital business, so maybe we just dropped the word digital because that sounds like 20 years ago. But still, within that, then there's some key channels. There's emerging channels like gaming. There's huge platforms like social media, that you need to still kind of stay relevant in. And then there's obviously the conversion of what would be classed as traditional channels into digital. So every broadcaster now has a video player online. They have a box set catalog in the background. Radio and podcasts go hand in hand. So actually, what you're doing is you're really opening up choice to people to just be a little bit more in control of the media that they consume.
And you'd mentioned previously there around the growth in specialization within certain channels, but in actual fact, one needs to have a broad overview and an integrated, approach. The accelerated growth of, I guess, digital as a channel, and you'd mentioned social media, you'd mentioned gaming. How do senior marketeers, I'm talking, 10+ year professionals, where, excuse me, digital wasn't as prevalent, what advice would you give to heads of marketing and CMOs to really understand, the new market dynamics? You mentioned 66% of spend, is on the digital channel. What sort of, I guess, problems or gaps do you see in traditional businesses, who perhaps have been maybe slow adopters to the new normal?
Yeah, look, I don't think that they've missed the headlines. I think there's enough available now for people to catch up quickly, and especially you've seen this spike, a huge surge in terms of people who have been training online. So lockdown has I think will have benefited a lot of people in terms of the acceleration of skills themselves, and I don't think they were left out of the picture either. Like we've had, like digital has been important, certainly within most marketing plans, or they've been, the spend has been growing. So, it's been relevant and important within their plans for the last 10 years. So they shouldn't necessarily feel like they're out in the cold in any way. If there was a time to double down and make sure that you are up to speed, with them, with the digital environment, and that's right now, because things have changed. They ain't going back. I like certainly time with channels will change post lockdown. Like people be out home again, be able to go to cinema. But the most likely thing is that they'll spend more time with media and marketing channels overall. And then it comes back to then make sure that the principles of marketing apply to the channels and the communications that you design for today's world. It needs to have that kind of slight twist, but you can't overlook marketing principles. And a lot of things, for example, like digital would have a lot of marketers focused on funnel or performance type marketing, which makes you look very narrowly at audiences. Whereas more of the market discipline, the old school type thinking would be, how can we be relevant to more and different segments, and actually sell to more people? So how does that then apply in terms of an ecosystem that's more prevalently digital? So I do think that's where you need to, if you're an old school marketer, don't feel like you're out in the cold. There's a lot of people who've missed the education around those broad principles too. So maybe the best thing to do is actually get a blend of talent together.
You mentioned about new channels, and I guess what COVID has brought is it's accelerated certain routes to market. you've recently published a very interesting article, and a subject matter that I'm not, 100% an expert on, given my generation. I turned 40 last week. Let's talk about gaming. Gaming has a global audience of 2.7 billion. When I think of gaming, I think of Mario Kart, and I think of FIFA. I think of the media portrayal of the geek sitting in the basement, online. Um, what part has gaming, and I guess it's experienced accelerated growth, and it's a really live and beneficial channel for marketeers to capitalize on, and one that's pretty undercapitalized at the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe let's talk to, I guess, some of the recent knowledge and your publication around the gaming industry, and how it's grown. There's some really interesting case studies I've heard you talk about recently.
Yeah, it doesn't get the same revenue share as other channels. I think it's been overlooked primarily out of bias, and some of it is down to just I would say what is sold across that platform. Like the ads to date that have been sold are kind of more like banner and pop-up type stuff. The annoying stuff that we got rid of off the internet, we threw into some gaming sites. That's all changing very quickly. The actual scale and opportunity for the likes of product placement, brand integrations, sponsorships, subscription models, and like you can actually, a number of gamers teach other people how to game, or they might be a subscriber who teach people how to play chess and stuff like that. They've subscriptions the size of some publications. They charge for that. So there's huge and diverse set of revenue source and actually opportunities for brands to connect. Like gaming is highly social. It's big in terms of viewing, just like people watch other people gaming. A lot more than you think. You think it's strange, but it's not strange to a big number of people. And it's you have people with their credit cards already locked in and ready to go. And you can't say that about many media platforms in terms of where you drive engagement. So I don't understand why marketers overlook this area. And one of the things I was just from a reach-based marketing point of view, marketing departments have set up huge social media teams. They're trying to find incremental reach and engage consumers outside of mass targeting, win share of market. By doing all that, they spend huge amounts of money with social media channels. When TikTok opened, they fell over themselves to try and find a way to get onto, one social media platform. That's very good, actually. I really like it, but it still is one. And then you have gaming, which takes up half the time that people spend with social media, has a huge reach. The average age isn't actually too far away from yourself, like 33 to 35, based on kind of most global reports. And a lot of it is done through mobile, so it's
that's a good spending. That's a good spending age. I mean, not to get too generalistic about it, but if you're, I guess, targeting a consumer set and you're looking at your audience segmentation, I mean, going after 33 to 35-year-olds, it probably could be a lucrative market to go after.
Yeah, and it's also it's still slightly indexed towards males, but only like 52% in terms of Global Web Index did a survey on it at the end of last year. That was their global findings. So in terms of total audience, so it's not niche anymore. And they do. If you think of where that 2.7 billion people are in the world, they're in the kind of higher spending economies.
Sure.
So you're probably talking about 50% of population from when you look at kind of maybe the more developed economies.
I think I'd read an article recently, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but in the recent Super Bowl, there was an online concert, an online artist went live on one of the gaming platforms and attracted a 12 million viewership.
Yeah, so that
during the Super Bowl, is that right?
It was the same weekend as the Super Bowl, not this year, in 2020.
Right.
There's a DJ called Marshmello.
Right.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
big
Know him,
white bucket.
know him well. He's sweet.
Yeah, I think you have all his catalog there behind you on your
Yeah,
shelf.
yeah.
Um,
I played him before Neil Diamond.
yeah, but yeah, like so, he had a concert in Fortnite, and obviously, gaming is a big place for social gathering now,
Yeah.
and he was able to get an audience of 10 million, and it's obviously more than who were at the Super Bowl the same weekend. And it probably should have alerted more marketers to the fact that this is a really really big space,
Yeah.
but it's going to move so quickly. Like just keep an eye in that space. It will turn on, because I think eyes are now beginning to open,
Mhm.
and
I-
reach and engagement. They are difficult to find. New reach. They
And
are
so
difficult things.
and the social element, you'd hit upon it there. I mean, we're all crying out for social interaction
Yeah,
in a socially distant manner.
yeah,
I guess, and there's only so many trivia quizzes that we can do with our families. I mean, gaming, it does provide a platform for people to interact in a meaningful way.
I
Not a
think.
way that I've jumped on board, but 2.7
Yeah,
billion have.
Who was it? Dentsu had something recently where they found that people were staying online more
Mm,
in gaming forums for company.
mm.
They spend an extra hour, in these forums, or watching content purely for kind of either entertainment or for greater company because of lockdown boredom.
And I think they average 7 hours a week,
Yeah,
and the platform is via mobile phone, so it's not like it's not console or it's not PC based. And again, coming back to our old perceptions of what gaming is, it's just so accessible to everybody.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's what like saying it's as ubiquitous as you are with your mobile phone, as you are with your credit card on your phone, as you are with social networks on your phone. Think of it in the same way. So 50% of the time spent gaming is on mobile, and revenue is kind of pretty much to match. The one thing that's happened at the end of last year is that Xbox launched their new version, and so did PlayStation 5.
Sure.
So consoles are kind of going to come back into fame, but there isn't a thought that that's going to take time away from gaming elsewhere. Because mobile gaming is a little different. You can do it in micro chunks, a little bit more in downtime, whereas then a console game is a little bit more a dedicated
Mm.
thing to do. So you spend a bit more time. So extra time with console is going to just be stacked time on top of the time that people are already spent gaming or watching people gaming, or socializing through these platforms.
Interesting. I mean, marketing is continually evolving. Just to take it back a point, you talked about the bucket list of brands that you wanted to work across in your career, and you're fortunate to have worked with many leaders. you know what advice would you give to marketeers out there who are listening, who need to be across so many different channels, but at the same time, to your original point, that it's important that you don't become I guess pigeonholed into one specific channel, that you need to have that helicopter view to be a successful commercial marketeer. I mean, how do you traverse that landscape, and how do you grow your career such that you potentially could be a head of or a CMO one day?
Yeah, I think what happens is it's it's what you want to do with your career. Not just within marketing, but the best teams are usually made up of a combination of people who have multidisciplined skills, a wider view, and maybe like a lot of people talk about maybe the Swiss Army knife or the T-shaped type marketer, where they have one or two skill sets that they can drop deep down into, but
Sure.
they know enough about all the other parts that they can provide a good lens of that, and analyze performance in those areas. Or you can be a specialist as well. The problem at the moment is there's just too many specialists, so the balance isn't right. But
Mm,
certainly, if you can imagine, as you move up in your career, you are meant to be building more transferable skills. You are meant to be layering experience. You know that you're in a highly changeable environment, because marketing from when you started at day one in the industry versus to where you are now is completely different. There's so much more on your plate. So you need to be layering skills. You need to be building transferable skills as well. That kind of a discipline from one should actually apply to others, and that's why there never should have been such a divide between, say, digital and traditional. Like, especially if you look at I kind of dispel, like, talking linearly about something previously. But if you were to look at, say, broadcast or TV advertising and the impact that has on organic search across most categories, there's an uplift. And now that's a little bit of correlation rather than causation, in terms of the observation I'm making there. Causation, sorry, observation. A lot of Asians, but effectively all media plays well together. So you do need to have transferable skills, or at least be able to work with your partners in delivering an integrated plan.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it's like anything else. Start layering your skills. Start looking at where the industry's going. Know that it's not going to stand still, and that if you want your career to move, you can't stand still with it. And look at again what businesses want from marketing. Understand about measurement. Understand about where the payback comes from. Make sure you understand kind of both marketplace and consumers' future trends, and grow that as an expertise above what you're specialized in.
Yeah, and I mean, in line with that, obviously, it's so multi-layered, as you've rightly attested to. Communication skills and working collaboratively as a team. Marketing and digital, they're no longer siloed entities within a commercial team. In fact, I was speaking to someone this week who comes from one of the big law firms, and she'd mentioned that marketing and business development now are within the one team and fall under the one umbrella. So that convergence between driving revenue, customer acquisition, customer retention, and revenue generation, it fits seamlessly into the overall marketing strategy per se, and one must be able to work holistically as part of that unit.
Yeah, I think, look, that's a great I suppose that's where businesses need to be. A lot of talk about agility over the last 12 months, but businesses don't have that unless they can get people working together. And I think actually this is a great kind of inflection point for many industries in terms of how we get our teams together and how we move quicker. And it's not even about marketers working in a silo, just as even a department. All businesses need to kind of come together. I think marketing definitely needs to have a better relationship with sales. The two have kind of divorced over the last 20 years. So they need to kind of come back and work more complementary to one another. But certainly, yeah, that, like, speed. If you want speed, you kind of need people all moving at the same, same pace within a business, all kind of focus on the one outcome. And like, maybe that's actually project teams within a business that are multidisciplined themselves, from different areas, or multi-department.
And with sales and marketing working complementary, and again, not to go down a rabbit hole, but it would be remiss of us not to discuss just marketing technology and the role that MarTech plays in demand generation, and in I guess that top of funnel, not to throw too many phrases around, but top of funnel activity in filtering prospective customers through that buyer journey. What's your observation on the role that technology plays within the overall marketing strategy?
I think that this might sound a bit contrarian. I hope it doesn't, because
it's okay.
Yeah, no, like, I'm not trying to pull punches, but like, for the most part, most industries have access to the same data as their competitors. There's not too much difference, except maybe some of the first-party data that they have on their customers. But that needs a whole new level of cleaning. So let's say everybody has the same type of information.
I mean, you say type of information, you're talking name, geographic location, email address, and some broad spending habits, perhaps.
Yeah, marketing, market information, economic information, technological trends.
Yeah.
They all shape. Like, 'cause I would always say, societal or cultural trends, technological trends, and economic trends are probably bigger shapers of markets. So, as a marketer, you need to start paying attention to them as well, because they dictate your future consumer behavior and actually the future behavior of your marketplace.
Yeah.
So you do, but all the same information is effectively available to businesses. Likewise, so is pretty much the same marketing tech.
Mm.
Now I think there's a huge duplication in marketing tech, or underusage of it. But it's always going to be, the most focused team are going to be the ones who apply that information and those platforms or the technology in the most focused way. It's like, so if you're a marketing team that's focused on profit, you'll deliver profit. You'll find ways of using those tools. If you're a marketing team that understands that, um, a better view of your customers, and who they are, who they could be, um, you'll have a better shape in terms of what you're looking for, what signals are in all that data that you can
Yeah.
pull from to kind of deliver future growth for a business, or maintain. Maybe it might be actually, it isn't always about growing customers. Sometimes it's about increasing your price, and what level of price that actually drives more revenue, or sorry, drives more profit in the business
Sure.
than trying to acquire new customers.
Yeah.
So it has to be about who's using the information, who's using the technology, because it's the same stuff available to everybody.
Yeah. The old rubbish in, rubbish out
A bit like that,
type of
yeah.
phrase. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you touched upon, I guess, just wider market considerations, and one needs to be switched on to, yes, who your current customers are, but who your future customers are in line with the market. In your time in media planning, obviously econometrics, plays a huge part in that media planning. Would you mind just touching on, I guess, the importance of econometrics, and how you see that fitting into, your overall, strategy with regards to media spend?
It's quite fundamental, actually, and it's one area that doesn't get enough investment from an Irish marketing budget's point of view. I'll go back to how small research and measurement is within the overall global spend. Certainly, Ireland would be guilty of that as well. And the but it is an area that shows quite kind of critical areas within business in terms of where marketing affects. Like, for example, are you optimizing the right channel mix? Are you putting in the right investment into marketing to basically capitalize on an available sales, the full amount of sales that are available out there in market? Is there headroom? Is there brands that are a lag on your portfolio, like basically reducing your profit, or
Yeah.
are there great halo effects from having other brands? Like, I also looked into maybe some bad practices in marketing adopted, like promotions and stuff like that, and how much they would cost your business. So it is hugely important. It's underinvested in from an Irish point of view. As a tool, it's a bit static though, and the problem with that is it kind of tends to be more Excel based or PowerPoint based. So people find it difficult to migrate it over timelines.
Mm.
So I can understand a little bit why people are a bit, resistant to invest in it. It needs to be more ongoing. The way that businesses had been using, say, which was attribution, a bit of a proxy. Like, it's not really a great indication of future business.
Mm.
Um, it was a little bit of an optimization tool, but it wasn't as sharp as people thought it was, from a performance marketing point of view.
Mm.
But if people had adopted the same mindset to econometrics, it would be ongoing, continuous. I think it would be more friendly to more users, so it would be software based rather than caught within an Excel,
Yeah.
and it would travel more broadly across marketing departments. The only thing I'll say within that is you can't override, experience. You can't override that it's still only one source of information, and that you need to be looking, more broadly into what information is available to you on both your customers and your marketplace.
Mm.
So as important as I say it is, it's not the only thing that marketers get. And sometimes the guilty kind of thing that people do is they get this, and it's the answer to all their questions, and that's just it.
Yeah.
It's just a no when it comes to understanding people. I I like. your best friends, your family. Do you understand them? Some of the things you see them do, you know,
Yeah.
you,
Well,
you,
again,
people
with
always
reference to
surprise
the
you,
current situation at the
Yeah,
moment,
people.
let's not discuss how we're all getting on with our families.
No, no, but like the people always surprise you, even those closer to you, So
Absolutely.
just keep that in mind.
And the point that you had alluded to earlier on about past performance being a good
Yeah.
indicator of future performance. I mean that's all gone out the window now. Essentially,
Yeah, but see if because of the slow nature of econometrics and that it's not measured continuously, um, that is a big issue for business. And they
yeah,
used to have a very powerful resource in terms of how they would measure and report return on their marketing investment. But the last year looks nothing like the
mm,
the previous 3 months or 3 years before it. So it would have been a very weak tool to kind of predict performance. But had you been measuring it on an ongoing basis, you would have been able to gather the data gradually and actually have a better predictor of the future. And actually, the more of the econometric um, businesses that I work with now, they are software based. They measure continuously, and actually they're building the forecasting capabilities. They're not ready yet, but actually they'll be ready by the second half of this year, and they'll have a much more robust because it's based on kind of the same type of regression analysis
yeah.
that is used to look back at the past, and you can put in some of your inferences and see how they actually affect the marketplace. That's not really done with econometrics either. I think that's a huge gap. But yeah, more of that analysis also needs to be applied looking forward to your point.
Yeah. It's look, it's just such a broad area, and again, when we go down, the econometric line, you start
Yeah,
introducing, data, and you start introducing, predictive modeling and customer insights and future strategy again, which adds to the point that marketing is just such a holistic exercise
yeah.
feeding into the
Uh,
overall
Look,
commercial.
maybe you can't afford to do such deep, analysis in terms of how your marketing spends money, but the principle that you should always try and find the evidence, and continue to look at how marketing performs or how marketing drives, either immediate sales or future sales, is important. So, let that always be the starting point. You'll find some evidence, even if it's correlated evidence,
Mm.
within what you do to show you that you're doing the right thing and that you can talk to your CEO about it.
And again, and the flip side of that, your confirmation bias will always be
Yeah,
prevalent. We'll
I know
always
you will
find
look.
just we'll find
I know you can
justification
always find the information you want
you
to
want to
prove
find.
something. Yeah,
Yeah. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you this morning. Just in terms of I guess tying a bow around kind of this broad discussion. What do you foresee in the 6 to 9 months ahead, for the rest of 2020 2021? And look, I appreciate that no one has a crystal ball, but you know, I'm confident. I think there's a huge pent up demand there, ready
yeah.
to explode to really activate the economy. Um, I mean, how does that feed into what marketeers and commercial professionals should be doing now to be in the best position to take advantage?
There's definitely going to be a surge, in my opinion. I think there's huge pent up demand, and there's changes afoot. Like so, the likes of market cap to GDP ratios as well. Governments are going to come looking to big companies if they're kind of doing this already. For some class of payback and investment back in communities. I think we'll have inflation, which will be, which has been very stagnant, but good for economic growth. We'll have more people returning to work. And there's definitely going to be this K-shaped recovery, you know. So the people who can spend money will, but don't forget the people who will continue to struggle for a little bit longer. They'll still have all incidentals, they'll all have incremental spends, and that all adds up, particularly when you look at it from a mass market basis. So there'll be more spend. Um, Certainly there's pent-up demand. So I'm saying that there's the roaring 20s are on their way. And it's not like, looking back at 100 years ago and trying to just be fashionable. There is definitely the signs of that. Everything that we've been shut off from, we want a little bit more. So travel will open up again. There'll be need for business travel, but probably further down the line. There'll also be further regulations, I think, that will come into place. And I don't think any of that is there to kind of hamper growth. I think it's actually there to catch up. One with,
Well, I think it's necessary with big tech.
yeah, not just tech, but across industry. Probably has been through a cycle that was due for review anyway, and delayed because of COVID. Because how are you meant to judge things as things are right now? It's not actually. I know we've been living with it for a long time, but it's not actually normal life. And from a marketing point of view, so many channels are going to open up. We obviously talk about new channels like gaming, but the whole mix of things are going to change. If you want to look at, like, more people be out of home, so start seeing posters again, go to cinema, they start going to events again. All of that will be ways of connecting with people. At the same time, the way we're shopping is different, but effectively, it used to be bricks and mortar. The longer we open, the more customers we get. We're open 24/7 now. There's loads of more ways that you can, trade with businesses. So, and it's around the clock. So business growth should have prospered by actually, the switch on of digital. I think there's going to be just, I'm not saying it's only going to be good times ahead, but I think things are going to move so much more quickly from a productivity point of view in the next kind of, say, 3 years. Next 3 years will eclipse the previous 5 years in terms of productivity. And I think from a marketplace point of view, there's going to be a surge, and it's going to carry on. And I think I suppose if you were looking 100 years ago to the past, what we have to make sure, or even 10 years ago for the Irish economy, what we have to make sure is that we're not creating any bubble that's going to let ourselves down in 10 years time, and that it's growth that can smooth out and maybe balance across economies and different countries and stuff like that. But yeah, certainly I'm optimistic about what lies ahead.
Fantastic. Ian, I think that's probably a good place to draw a line, with that optimistic sentiment. Just for anyone listening out there, who obviously, hopefully, have been enthralled with your deep knowledge of all things marketing and commercial growth. Where can people find you, and what sort of projects are you focusing on at the moment? If you want to give yourself a little plug, by all means.
Yeah, I tend to operate mostly off LinkedIn, if I'm honest with you, just in terms of keeping demand manageable. But it's a platform that I really like anyway, and kind of it's a great source of information. And then I believe that you need to share back. So I'm a regular contributor there. Best place to find me is probably on LinkedIn. In relation to current work, it's never not interesting. There's always I get to work across a broad set of industries still, but there's different work. Some of it is actually designing teams, basically kind of against future skill sets and how to unlock future revenue. And it's very different from the initial headcount conversations that I might have with CEOs when they're trying to expand their marketing capabilities. Other areas might be in terms of consumer insight and better understanding in terms of the forces that affect consumer behavior, people's behavior generally, and how markets are shaping up, plus the competitive rivalry that may be sitting around the corner that they don't know about. I do a lot of work around insights too. And then some of the other stuff is, like the stuff I grew up with, media, and making sure that plans are actually planned in an integrated fashion, that there's no dead ends, there's no things left out of that. And some of that is actually, because I'm a consultant, it's actually, I get a deeper view into businesses. I was working with one business, and can't go into too much information, but effectively they wanted to fix their communication, create more demand. And obviously the market has changed. They want to flip it into, driving more demand from a digital point of view. And they had a credit department, and they need to approve things at quicker speeds, because that was a quality kind of metric that they put out there. But what they were doing is, because they're creating more demand, they're creating more bad demand in a way that they couldn't be converted. And they were bottlenecking and flooding a credit department, couldn't approve the thing. So there was more no's going out. That affects their, the overall sentiment towards the company. I thought I did everything right, and then what they're telling me is no. The credit department's annoyed at the marketing team because they're, sending them bogus approvals, and they're also under duress because they have to approve things within a narrow time span. So the gap was nothing wrong with the marketing. Marketing actually was working too effectively.
Yeah.
What you need to do is balance that out with what could actually be supplied.
Yeah.
So it's great actually being able to take a deeper look into businesses, because sometimes the brief stopped a little bit prematurely.
Sure.
And you did everything right from a marketing point of view, but it again comes back to getting that marketing team and the other parts of the business communicating, working cross-functionally, and moving at the right pace for everybody.
Yeah.
So that the customer wins at the end. So yeah, I work in areas like that as well, in terms of integrated planning, but when you pay attention, it could take you into other parts of the business.
So cross-functional business strategy, through a customer-focused marketing lens, if we could surmise.
Look, I suppose a lot
that's
of
your bag.
a lot a Swiss Army knife approach, but if I was in a bigger market, I probably would specialize a little bit more. The
Sure.
nature of the Irish market, and actually the interest in terms of the briefs that are out there,
Yeah.
kind of have me work more kind of across a different cross section of briefs. But you know what, I prefer it this way. I really do. It's more exciting.
Yeah, no, it's always interesting. Ian, thank you so much for your time. I very
Thanks
much
for having
appreciate
me.
it. No, not at all. And hopefully our listeners have enjoyed this conversation. And yeah, we look forward to more Lincoln Lens webinars and publications. So tune in online. But Ian, for today, thank you very much.
No, thank you, and
Bye-bye.
maybe you can get Neil Diamond on the next one.
Or Marshmallow.
Or Marshmallow. Yeah.